Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we are going to be covering the Renewal grass. So Witch Queen obviously is here, and this is one of the new exotics that I was interested in, I guess to say the least. So if we look at the description here, it says your Dustfield grenades have a much larger effect radius. Allies inside the Dustfield take reduced damage, and targets inside the area deal reduced damage. So there's three main aspects to this. There's the enhanced size, which actually has an effect that isn't listed here. There's also the DR the DR for yourself or allies. It does work on yourself. And then there's a debuff for how much damage your opponents deal from being inside this. So let's start with the increased radius. So the larger radius takes the Dustfield up to a 6.5 meter radius. That's roughly a 13 meter diameter. And it spawns a medium-sized crystal by default, even when you're not using Touch of Winter, and that's something that isn't shown actually. And it stacks with Touch of Winter as well, so it actually gives you a full-size crystal when you use the Dustfield. And not only that, it has a slightly larger radius to stack with it. That gives you a 7 meter radius, roughly 14 meter, give or take, diameter. So that's already pretty interesting, but in terms of your allies inside the Dustfield getting damage resistance, the way this works is it applies a buff called Resist ×2. And that essentially takes a 140 hand cannon headshot, which normally deals 70 damage, down to 60 damage. And that means you're essentially getting a 14% give or take damage resistance. The crazier part of this comes from your enemy's debuff though. When an enemy is inside your Dustfield, meaning you don't have to be in it with them, that's a whole other discussion, but when they are in your Dustfield, like you throw a Dustfield at them, which with the size of them is very hard to miss, they get a debuff called Oversoul's Grip. The debuff brings the 140 hand cannon headshot down from 70 damage to 35 damage. That means they deal 50% less damage, which is a lot less damage. That's half their normal damage. I will say though, it looks like that debuff is actually bugged and doesn't apply correctly, or it doesn't apply itself, and it goes away inconsistently as well. We don't know why this was happening, but it was. The next question though for this is what happens, when you are in the Dustfield and your opponent is affected by the Dustfield inside of it? Well, you get to get both benefits. Or if you see an ally in a fight, can you throw the Dustfield at them and affect their opponent and then give them damage resistance at the same time? Can you double dip? And yes, you can. So the damage resistance from the Resist ×2 buff and the Oversoul's Grip debuff on the opponent stack, where it applies the debuff on the enemy's damage and then applies the damage resistance buff on the user or ally. And what we saw is that it resulted in dealing 30 damage with an adaptive hand cannon. Again, that is higher than 50% less of its normal damage. Last question here is, does it stack with Whisper of Chains? Whisper of Chains gives you damage resistance for being close to a crystal. And well, this spawns a full-size crystal. If you're using it with Touch of Winter, and even without it, you're going to get the damage resistance from it. And yes, it does stack with it. It gets you Resist ×3 instead of ×2, and that gives you 36% damage resistance from being inside the Dustfield. That takes a hand cannon headshot from 70 damage to 45 damage. But this goes on to beg the question, what if an ally or you are in the Dustfield together with an enemy? And that's where it gets super crazy. A hand cannon headshot dealt 23 damage. Again, like that's an astronomical amount of damage resistance. To the point where we tested an adaptive sniper, it dealt 124 damage to the head. It could not headshot. An aggressive shotgun would deal 9 or 10 damage per pellet, where it normally deals 22 damage per pellet, and at 6 meters, could not one-hit kill. Even the Chaperone dealt 84 damage to the head there. Now, you might be thinking that sounds pretty niche. You have to be in the Dustfield with them, which I don't think it's that niche because the Dustfield radius is massive. But even if you were outside of it, Chains or Whisper of Chains still works while you're outside of the Dustfield. It has a bigger radius than the Dustfield itself, so you could be outside of it and have an opponent affected by it and still be getting Whisper of Chains. And in that scenario, something like the Chaperone is still only dealing 99 damage to the head, and even an aggressive sniper only deals 178 damage to the head. So this pretty much demolishes and destroys any sort of shotguns, slug shotguns, fusions, or any sort of close range play, and it has a massive radius that covers like entire sections of a map. So I think without a doubt, this exotic, considering they're on the fastest grenade, I'm able with double grenade kickstart, I believe, and on Dustfields with Whisper of Chains, a Dustfield, you can get it back in 7 seconds. So considering this is on the fastest charging grenade that has that fast of the fastest cooldown rate and has this much of an impact, I think these could be meta impactful and are very, very strong. So, hope you enjoyed the rundown of how the Renewal grips work, and I'll have some build videos and gameplay out in the future. Take care.